right, let's call this meeting to order. Can you please rise? And the invocation is going to be done by Ms. America Rojas from Highland Methodist Church, please.
She's here. She's out.
Yeah. Okay.
Claudia, would you go ask for Ms. Rojas? Miss America, right?
America Rojas.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, take your time.
Good afternoon. Let us be in an attitude of prayer. Dear God, we thank you for allowing us to call upon you this day. Thank you for this time that you have brought us together. Help us during this meeting to be patient, wise, and loving, and to make any decisions under your guidance. Help us and prompt us to be available to your presence in unity with you and in one another. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Okay.
You'll join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Probably wind up breaking it. May I please have the code enforcement staff come join me up at the front? You should have done this. Thank you. It is a great honor to do this. The City of Odessa Proclamation. Whereas the code enforcement officers provide for the safety and health and the welfare of citizens and communities throughout the United States through the enforcement of building, zoning, housing, animal control, fire safety, environmental, and other codes and ordinances. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, well-trained, and highly responsible individuals who take their jobs seriously, are proud of their local government within which they serve, and we are committed to improving neighborhoods in the course of their daily jobs. And whereas the City of Odessa honors our code enforcement officers for the contribution these individuals have made for the quality of our community. The accomplishment is making a collective decision concerning our city that brings meaning to our lives, and to recognize the dedication of code and compliance officers. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the code enforcement officers throughout our city, and extend our heartfelt thanks for their continued commitment to the public service. Now, therefore, I, Filiberto Gonzalez, by the virtue and authority vested in me by the Mayor of the City of Odessa, do hereby proclaim October 2018 as Code Enforcement Awareness Month throughout the City of Odessa, and urge all citizens to recognize the dedication and commitment of those who are working diligently to improvement of the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Please give them a round of applause. I don't know if y'all have ever heard her speak, and whenever she does invocations, I always feel like I don't need to go to church on Sunday no more, because I feel very blessed.
God bless you. To the council and our mayor in his absence, and to our city manager, and to each of you that are present here today. Indeed, it's a blessing to be here and to be honored with the proclamation of the dedication of our code enforcement officers. We apologize to you that our officers could not be here. By no means can we get it done without having all 19 or 14 or 15 or however many we have to do the work to cover the entire city limits of Odessa. Code enforcement is not just the month of October, but it's a year-long program. It is something that we encourage each one of our citizens to take pride in your neighborhood and be a part of the solution, as KOB says. Be a part of the solution, not just during the month of October, but the year long. We thank the council, we thank our mayor and our city manager and all of our staff for being a part of this great city of Odessa. We want to put a plug in on Thursday, October the 11th, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We are having a code enforcement reception. At that reception, you will get an opportunity to meet the code enforcement officers that are in your area. As we said, we apologize for them not being here tonight, but many of them had other commitments that they could not be here. But we will be recognizing them on Thursday, October the 11th. And guess what? We got some food, some free food, some water and some tea. And our city manager is going to be there. And, you know, we're just looking forward to all of you coming out. It's free to the public. So please come out and be a part of our code enforcement reception. And let me introduce you. We have our director, Ms. Marita Saul, and we also have our code enforcement field supervisor, which is Oscar, and I'm yours truly, Darlene Mays, the code enforcement education administrator. Thank all of you and bless each of you. We got some little gifts that we want to give to the council, because if your grass grows 12 inches or above, we have some measuring tapes that you can put it on your key ring, and we want to give it to everyone, but you can measure 12 inches or above. Anything that's 12 inches or above is in violation.
What'd I tell you, huh?
God. That's a force.
Okay. Test. Okay. All right. Approval for the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Vote is 4-1, right? 5-1.
5-0.
5-0. I thought I heard. I need to see my. All right, so we move to other city council. Remove from the table to consider rejection of proposal for record service. I need a motion.
So moved to reject this.
Okay, we need to have him.
Need
To
open
remove
it.
it from the
Okay.
table.
Let's hear from the chief.
Let's hear from the chief first. Okay.
Excuse me, counsel, if I have a, may I have a motion to remove from the table,
So moved.
please?
Oh, okay.
I'll
Second.
make a motion.
Second.
We know what we're doing, guys. Okay, so just give us a second here.
Do we have to vote on it?
Do we have to vote on it?
Yes.
After
then-
Chief Garkey.
After the vote. Okay. All right.
Good evening. Staff issues a request for proposal and publicly acknowledged submissions from Neil Pool Records and Blue Star Towing on 7/10 of 2018. Staff has reviewed the current bid specifications and recommends to council to reject the received proposals. Upon rejection, staff will prepare a new proposal package with updated specifications to bring efficiencies and cost saving to the city. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
No.
Move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, vote is 5-0. Approved.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Number 2, consider approval of purchase traffic signal poles for university. Mr. Hal Finman.
Good afternoon, Council. This agenda item is for the city to buy the traffic signal poles for the university roadway project. We've heard from various contractors that the lead time for signal poles now is 20 weeks. So they're concerned about how that's going to affect their construction schedule. So what I plan to do is buy the signal poles, I'll store them, and it'll be ready for the contractor when they're ready to do the project. The vendor for this to buy the signal poles is Consolidated Traffic Controls using the HGAC buy board, and the cost for this is $140,974.
How much again?
$140,974.
Yeah. Well, thank you for thinking forward with this. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Vote is 5-0. All right, let's move to public hearing. Open a public hearing to consider annexation to the city of Odessa of approximately 2.975 total acres of land adjacent to the city limits throughout the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction in Ector and Midland counties, Texas. First public hearing, Mr. Gary Landers.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. As you see the map that's displayed on the back, and I know several members in the audience have smaller versions of that map, this is a combination of several annexation types. It's called a voluntary annexation, even though we may hear some property owners from some of the industrial districts who may oppose annexation and say they don't want to be annexed. But it's called voluntary because all of the items on this agenda today are either owned by the city of Odessa, and so that's voluntary, you're annexing your own property, or they're the paved portions of roadways owned by the government, another voluntary annexation. Or there's 2 categories involving industrial districts. One involves the older industrial districts, number 2, 3, Black Gold, and Weatherford is the kind of small industrial district up in the northwest that I couldn't remember the name during our briefing session, Weatherford. Those 4, and in addition to that, we also have 4 voluntary annexations that involve industrial districts that have been created this year, or we have another one which is actually being requested to be created today, which are where the owners of those industrial district properties have requested annexation to be effective January 1st, 2019. Now, the 4 older industrial districts, which are probably the ones that may have some people that want to talk about that, those involve older districts that were created with longer terms, 10 years or so. The council, those original terms expired. The city council at the time renewed the term because, as you know, you have the authority to renew the term of an industrial district if you don't choose to annex it. You have flexibility in how many years you renew those terms for, 10 years, 7 years, 1 year. The City Council on these 4 older industrial districts has previously considered them. Their terms had expired. The council had renewed them. Then the renewed terms expired and the council renewed them again. And then that brought you to, I think, last year where the council considered these again and renewed these for an additional 1-year term, which expires December 31st, 2018. So this annexation, as it concerns those 4, since their industrial district is expiring in December of this year, it's time for the City Council to either annex them or to renew the industrial district. I hadn't gotten any direction to renew these districts, so I'm presenting them to you in this manner so that you may choose to annex them. You also have the ability, you may have an owner or 2 within some of these industrial districts that just for whatever reason doesn't want to be annexed. And you might direct the staff to consider that possibility of carving out those individual tracts from the larger industrial districts so that you can move forward with annexing the what appears to be the majority of these locations that have either requested annexation or are not opposing the annexation today. You will notice that there are orange areas on this map. That's the areas that are proposed for the voluntary annexation. It's hopefully this is presented to you as kind of a balanced annexation map for 2018. Balanced in the sense that there is areas being annexed in all parts of town. Clearly the majority is in the south part of Odessa. And this map, I think, reflects the good news that Odessa is experiencing a time of growth, and you are really growing in every direction. And this annexation map reflects the fact that the council may want to go out and annex some street intersections, some streets that are entryways to your city to control development at those entryways. You may want to go ahead and move forward with annexation of these larger, older industrial districts, and then hopefully you'll annex the areas owned by the city and those 4 new industrial districts that are requesting annexation. The purpose of this meeting is a public hearing, so I know there are people that have filled out cards that may want to speak or have questions.
I have a question. You mentioned something about being able to, if somebody really did not want to be annexed, that they actually had the opportunity to be able to be carved out of that opportunity. What are the pros and cons for them to be able to do that, and what are the pros and cons for the city if somebody did that?
Well, the reason I would say that is the idea behind the legislation that created the idea of industrial districts was a way for areas that did not want to be annexed or in originally areas that maybe weren't available or adjacent to city services to provide a contract where the city could provide basic services such as water and sewer. And in return, the owners of that district pay what's called a fee in lieu of taxes. So, for instance, if you annex an industrial district, there shouldn't be any financial increase to the owner because the owner should be paying a fee annually that is equal to what their property taxes would be. In the past, since these terms have all exceeded their original term and been renewed, then that means if you have individual own, some of these tracts are owned by one entity or one person, some of these have multiple owners. In those larger tracts that have multiple owners, it might make sense at this point in time if there are owners that want to be annexed or owners that are prepared to be annexed and also owners who don't want to be annexed, that you just separate those out so that you can move forward with the annexation of any lots or properties that aren't opposed to annexation. But at the same time, you could be sensitive to if you have owners who present a discussion or a request to you that they still don't want to be annexed, you might choose to renew their industrial district to just include the property that they own that's subject to that opposition.
Okay.
But wouldn't that create quite a mess to have this area annexed and this little spot not and this little spot not?
I think it creates a complicated situation, but one look at this map tells you we have a very complicated situation now. So our status quo is complicated, and you have the options to do what you want. That's how our local government system wants. You can annex portions and not annex portions. And really, I don't view that as a problem or a complication. I think that's local government at its finest.
Okay.
Can you change that vocabulary from to do what you want to do what we think is best?
To do what? Well, when I say what you want, I'm presuming that you're acting in all your votes in what you believe is the public interest. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, like Mr. Lander said, this is a public hearing, and if we have some cards from people that want to speak, so I think the rules are everybody gets 3 minutes. Okay. And in no particular order, these were just handed to me. Mr. Ted Tumanowski. Hey, you won?
You were on the luck of the draw.
You ever wanted to be first?
Yes, yes. And the card I filled out, it said,
30 minutes. And I
30
hope I can get it
minutes.
all in
Oh.
30 minutes. I hope. But
No,
I'll
if
try.
we give you 30 minutes, Steve Patton will start crying.
All right, thank you, Council. I guess we'll probably be addressing you, Mr. Landers, on these questions. I've got several, so I'm going to probably ask them and then let you expound on them.
Okay.
First of all, I am in one of the older industrial districts you were talking about. I believe it's industrial district number 2. As most of you are aware, I own a distribution logistics business in that area. It's right at the intersection of industrial, right off the intersection of industrial and I-20. Right now, there is no water. You did say that, as you mentioned, the industrial district contract could allow the city to provide services, but it's not required. First of all, if there is annexation of that property, is the city required to provide those utilities? Because they're not. Let me get 2 and 3. So first of all is, will they provide water? There is actually sewer at that. I don't know why there's sewer there and no water, but water. And I know it's a huge expense because I looked at doing it myself, and it was getting close to 6, 7, 8 figures, 9 figures, 8 figures, whatever, and bumping up to $1 million. Second of all, property use. I understand that, according to what I've read and the way I understand it, it's basically going to be grandfathered in. So whatever the current property use is can continue to be used for that, for what it's currently being used for. So my question is, for how long? Is it forever for the present property owner, or is it forever and a day till the end of time, or what? And then my third question, and probably the real one I really would like to know a real answer for, a solid answer. Why? Why? I don't understand the advantage to the city. To me, it's just going to add more expense to the city. I see really no huge advantage to the property owners. And so just why does the city want to do this? Or who came up with this, and why did they want to do this? Thank you.
I'm writing it down. So, when a city in Texas starts an annexation process, part of that process is the city has to do what's called a service plans. So city staff, as part of this process, will be required to provide a service plan document for the city manager, the city council to review that says how all the different city departments would provide services to these areas. Now, in doing that, they have to provide the same level of service to areas that are similarly situated. So if you're an area that doesn't have existing water lines, or a different area that doesn't have existing sewer lines, the city can't immediately start providing service if there's no infrastructure. But the city would be required to come up with a plan that describes how long it would take to reasonably bring infrastructure to that area, what the cost would be, or how they would otherwise provide that service, perhaps through another provider. So being annexed doesn't mean the city is required to sell you water if there's no water infrastructure, but it does mean the city is required to come up with a plan for providing water to that area, or a plan to providing sewer to that area, a plan to provide code enforcement and zoning services to that area, police protection, fire protection. Does that answer that portion? The second one, property use or land use, land restrictions. In the past, when the city of Odessa has annexed industrial districts or annexed a prior industrial district, it has, if I understand correctly, brought it in and then ultimately originally zoned it as future development. I know that in September of this year, the City Council approved annexation on a piece of property that was in a prior industrial district that was annexed in 2015, and it was just annexed in September 2018. So the zoning and the implementation of that zoning ordinance does not necessarily take effect immediately. But like you said, you are able to take advantage of what we call being grandfathered. So if you have land that's annexed by the city in an industrial district, or if you have land that's annexed by the city that's not in an industrial district, either owner can take advantage of that grandfather thing, meaning you should be, in most circumstances, able to continue doing what you've been doing when the city annexes you. Ultimately, the city would go through a process and zone that land. Typically, they would zone that land based upon how the land is being used, the grandfathered use, and then also how the land around it is being used. So if you're in a industrial district where most of the land around you is developed and has a use, that is typically what would be continued. If you're in an industrial, we have some industrial district areas where there's vacant land. So it has an established use. There is no grandfathered use if it's still vacant. It's just simply not part of the city yet. Does that?
For how long?
Well, when you're annexed, the city should, within a reasonable time, zone it, and the zoning should be appropriate. And I'm saying the city has taken up to 3 years to do that. So that is an example of what in the past has been considered to be a reasonable time. There's not a state law requirement of when that has to happen, but land should be zoned when it's annexed. And my understanding of what Odessa does is we zone it for future development. We have a land use called that, which would enable you to keep doing what you're doing until it's rezoned.
So after it's rezoned, does it grandfathering?
No, well then, once it's zoned, you keep that existing use, that grandfathered use, or that zoning use.
Your grandfather till you make a change. Is that
right?
correct?
If you abandon the property, abandon the use, you can lose that. If you have to fix more than half of it, or you choose to improve it and change it, but if you keep doing what you're doing, you keep that grandfathered status. That is typically what happens.
Okay. If I decide to sell the property, if I someday retire, maybe, it's obviously worth more as the business that it is now than if it had to change. So if I did sell the business, could I be able to sell the business and then continue to use it for the use it's used now, or would they have to change the business because it's zoned differently? You following what I'm saying?
Well, once it's zoned, well, that's a reason why you would want to go ahead and not just rely on a pre-existing grandfathered use. You'd want to go ahead and get it zoned based on that grandfathered use. The zoning stays until the zoning is changed.
So the way I understand it is if he sells it and the new owner comes in, he's grandfathered in also unless the new owner wants to make changes, right?
Well, we're talking about once it's zoned, it has that zoning. So the zoning goes with the sale. If we're talking about you sell land that's not zoned yet, light industrial or whatever a warehouse should be, that's why we would just want to do that zoning sooner rather than later once you're annexed.
I don't think you would want to take what you're doing right now and zone it for something totally different.
No, you want to keep what you've got.
You would want to. I don't think the city would want to come in and rezone it for something else.
And my thoughts in this, and if I'm thinking wrong, please correct me quickly. These are industrial districts. You're in an industrial district. I don't think anyone on the council with any sense would want to make it anything other than something that would be like an industrial district. In other words, I don't think they would want to kick out the industrial part and say, okay, now we want everybody for subdivisions. I don't see that happening.
Why is it that we're doing this anyway? Who came up with this? Do we know?
So are
you not going to answer my question? Your council member is asking you a question.
When these industrial districts were created, the state law provides the wording in the agreement, and the agreement is the requester is agreeing to future annexation as determined by the city. And so once any of you have entered into an industrial district agreement, if you check the wording of your agreement, if that wording is in compliance with state law, then you've requested annexation by whenever the city council chooses to do that. This council in the past has renewed those, and they may choose now to renew those. But they also have the ability, if they chose, to annex it. And so that's where we are today. All of these 4 older industrial districts have all had prior terms. Those expired, and they were either renewed or considered for annexation. So this is the process that leads the council to decide if they want to continue with annexation of the older industrial districts at the same time that they're doing this new annexation, or if they want to renew your industrial district contract. And they have all those options.
So again, who brought this up, the fact that to allow us to vote on this? I want to know, why is that? Because I agree with the gentleman. You guys, we haven't fixed their utilities or your water or whatnot in so long. All of a sudden now, it's going to cost more. It's going to cost you more headache than anything when you've learned to adjust with what you have right now. I understand that, so I get what you're saying.
Well, Malcolm, I think I can answer that question quickly. By law, we've set a limit. The last limit was 1 year, and that's coming up. We, as a council, must make a decision. Are we going to annex them, or are we going to extend their...
Sir, how long have you been without, what did you say, water, was it? How long have you been without it?
The entire time I've been there.
Well, remember that when you're not in the city, there's no obligation to provide water. Many times people use an industrial district, if water is available, to get water or sewer at an in-city limit rate. But if it's not available, the industrial district may or may not provide a means for you to get that. In your case, obviously, it hasn't.
Sounds like a bunch of excuses to me.
No, it's
nothing to say.
Okay. All right, so we have about 4 other people that want to speak.
His last question was why annex, and I won't go into that very much, but I would. That just sounds like it's a great layup shot for me, because I'm a city official. I have for my whole career. I think living in cities is a wonderful thing. I think they provide a quality of life that's good. They should provide fire service, police service. I think, no offense to anybody else, but I think city police service is usually better than county sheriff's service. If you're in the city and you don't have water or sewer, you have an expectation that over a period of time you will get those services. And in fact, one of the things the city council has just done in the last month is had a special meeting to look at what they call capital expenditures, a capital bond program, borrowing money for infrastructure issues. So this is a very good timing for the city council to consider annexation. Do they want to do these annexations? Because annexations do, as you mentioned, provide more cost to the city, but they also provide a benefit to the citizens. And so it's probably not fair for a city employee or contractor, or even for an elected city councilman, to try to answer what are the benefits of being a city, because we think being in a city is better than not being in the city. Protection, police, fire, I think the city already has some contracts with the county so that you probably already get fire protection service. The sewer that you're getting, you get, I guess, through the industrial district, and it's probably provided by the city already.
Okay. All right.
Didn't answer nothing. Yeah, I know.
Now we have Mr. Donald Murray, I believe. I forgot to do this with Ted, but please state your name and your address where you live. No, don't worry about it, Teddy. We know where you're at.
My name is Donald Murray, and I'm here on behalf of Randy Blakely and Blakely Construction. The address is 2830 West Interstate 20. It's going to be in the Industrial Zone 4. And I would just say this, we're not for this annexation. Several reasons. I don't think that there's been a plan put forth yet to provide any of the services that you spoke of. There's been no communication with any of the businesses out there about the ordinances that are going to be required if we decide to expand our business in any way and what have you. So currently, the plans that we have to operate our business with the small margins that we have and what have you, these taxes and the things that you're asking us to do and what have you, we've not put in any of our plans going forward. So my question to you would be, are you willing to work with us? Have you got a plan to work with us going forward?
I'll just provide a quick answer. The council may or may not have other comments, but remember, if you own property in an industrial district, you should be paying a fee in lieu of taxes that is equal to the property taxes. So while there may be other regulations that would apply to you, a financial tax is not a new charge that happens when an industrial district is annexed, because you should already be paying that.
Should be.
Well, you should be. If you're not, probably shame on us. We need to check on that.
Yeah, and I think to address the biggest problem that I've got is that if you are not educated about it. And one of the biggest things that I pointed out was it seems like every time that we come up to the annexation and the industrial district decisions is the fact that those affected are not properly educated. That's number one. You've got to be educated about it. I want y'all to know exactly what you questioned me on. You need to know those answers.
We need to know that.
And I thought that was one of the things that we had prepared in bullet point type presentation to be given to you when you were presented with the letter that this was a possibility. So, and I guess my biggest question is, Mr. Dubiansky asked why. My biggest question is why? I mean, if you are paying in lieu of the amount of taxes, et cetera, then these things should be a plus to you. But it seems like every time we get to this point, there are always questions in regards to why are y'all going to bring me into the city and we're not properly answering them. So I go back to the very beginning. We need to properly educate y'all and properly answer the questions that y'all have.
Yes.
And I apologize that if we have not done so.
From what we're seeing, there is no advantage.
And I have asked year after year that each and every business have a personal contact with the city, that we go out and we look at your property and we tell you what's coming down the pipe and we educate you. And it's got to be done that way.
And I apologize that it has not, because these questions should be things that y'all have been answered, et cetera, to where y'all have a good reasoning of why we're looking at what we're doing. And I don't believe you do.
So I'll leave it with this. You can please carve us out. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something that will be addressed with Landers, once the process starts, if that happens. You asked the questions, would we work with you? I really don't see anybody on this council or the mayor that would say we'll never work with anybody out there. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to do what's best for the city. And at the meantime, sometimes we got to look at, what's best for the 125,000 people out there instead of just one. So that's just my opinion. But I really appreciate you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. All right.
I agree with the citizens. I don't see where, because part of being educated is also we being educated as a council. And I haven't received that from my city manager nor from my attorney, who has my phone number, who could have called me and educated me or brought me up to speed, being the fact that I'm going to vote on this. So I'm only limited by information that I can gather. However, you're speaking about something that's going to affect people. but I get maybe a 5 or 6 day advance notice of it, and that's not enough sufficient time to really dig deep and get everyone's opinion about this before I make a decision. So I agree with you guys. Thank you.
I'd like to point out one thing, though, that I think we all understand what annexation is, and I think we all understand what the industrial sites are also. The things that are provided with you when you are within the city are the city functions, the police, the fire, the water, the sewer, the various different things associated with that. But it doesn't appear like we are properly communicating timelines. It takes a lot of money to take out water to that area. I don't know where we would be from that standpoint, but I do think that we understand the benefits. But I don't think we understand all the timeframes that have been answered or been pointed out beforehand. And those are things that we need to educate you with.
Well, I think Mr. Timanowski said the key word. What is your plan? What does your plan say?
We haven't given them a definite one.
I don't think we have a plan for after we annex, other than, yeah, we're going to do it. But, yeah, that doesn't get you very far.
And the other thing is understand it's just not your property. It's that whole area. What could happen within that whole area that in the future could be a big benefit to the city of Odessa. Yeah. But, again, the plan accordingly.
And I really think that annexation would be very good for you, be very good for the city. You need water out there. You need services. If you had the city services, then that area could grow, and I think you could prosper even more. But you have to have the city services.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dick Sibbles, please. Please state your name and your address, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. My name is Dick Sibbles. I'm president of Sibbles Incorporated, 2200 East 2nd in Odessa. We are located in Industrial District Number 2. I was down here in 1971 when all this started, and have been here ever 7 years since that was renewed. We are opposed to annexation, and in a minute I will tell you exactly why it pertains to our company. We are heavy manufacturing, steel fabrication. The city, we think, would receive no benefits from the annexation from us because they think, we have heard, that you're going to get city sales taxes from our sales. You will get none. The reason you get none is we do not charge sales taxes. In most industrial companies, their customers, as we are, have exemptions with the state. They pay their own taxes. We do not charge sales taxes. So the city would not have to deal with the various, many companies that we do business with before they would see any of that. The main change that was the main thing, and you will find when you go into it, is all those industrial district contracts have some different provisions in them. We negotiated in the provisions for District 2 is that we would not be obligated to enforce or provide or follow city building codes and ordinances. The reason being is our facility was started in 1947. It's been added on to and changed many times over the years. Now, I don't know what the current staff will say to you, but our condition or our experience has been in the past that no matter what is said in public in dealing with the planning or the inspection and permitting department, you will bring the entire facility up to the current city codes if you make a change or modification. We cannot do that. It would be too expensive. It would shut down our whole operation and probably be physically impossible. Therefore, we can't do it. Our properties are inspected routinely by our commercial insurance carrier, OSHA, environmental agencies, and they make sure we have a safe workplace. Therefore, we don't think it's necessary. Another factor, which you may or may not be aware of, we have radioactive material on our property. The reason is we use it in X-raying steel welding. That material is
Your 3
now...
minutes are up.
Pardon?
Your 3 minutes are up.
3 minutes are up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Sills.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ms. Rhonda Cayley. Please state your name and your address, please.
My name is Rhonda Cayley. I live at 6000 California Avenue in Ponderosa Estates. My original reason for coming to this meeting was rumors of annexation of Ponderosa Estates, which that has been clarified that Ponderosa Estates is not an interest at this time.
Yeah.
There is still a concern of 56th Street being annexed. I am opposed to that, as futile as that statement may be. You yourself, sir, said you see a lot of value living in the city. You obviously have never lived in the country, because country living offers a quality of life that is hard to describe. The peace, the quiet, it's the only thing that gives me an environment to de-stress from the job that I do. We love our environment. I've lived out there for 14 years, and I think everybody has moved out there for a purpose. I would say that I wish the city could find some way to find a different avenue for this property that is now owned by the city south of 56. My other concern is, how is this going to be zoned? Are we going to have commercial property all up and down 56th Street that's going to be adjoined to Ponderosa? There's a lot of concern with 56th Street being annexed. Since they built schools and other things. If anybody knows anything about the intersection of Ponderosa, 52nd and 56th, it's a death trap. I live on California Street, so I can see how many times the ambulance service visits that intersection. I thought it was poor judgment of our city and our zoning commission to allow a business to already be built on 56th Street at the Loop without even accelerating the safety of our citizens of this community, to just invite more traffic down 56th Street when we haven't even addressed the safety concerns. So I just wanted to have it on the books that there's more at stake here than whether Ponderosa is being annexed or not, because 56 is a major concern. I've lived here my whole life, been through booms and busts. I know we're a growing city. We've got to figure out how to accommodate the populations that are coming in. I just ask that we look at other options besides increasing the size of 56. We love our community, we love our country environment, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Cayley. Okay. Mr. Michael Ashton? State your name and your address.
My name is Michael Ashton, and I live at number 1 Hummingbird, Odessa. And I'd like to ask a few questions. We've been on some of our property there. I'm representing MSA Industries, Viking Inc., and Blue Mart. And we've been on some of our property since 1976. We've dealt with no sewer, no water. We have, pretty bad roads. They're not paved. And my main concern is when will we get water and when will we get sewer? We've been doing bottled water since 1976. Wow. So we've been there a long time. And of course, sales tax, I looked up sales tax for MSA before I came down here. They got 0 sales tax off MSA. This year they've got 0 because we're in manufacturing. Viking's in manufacturing. We do pay some sales tax, but I would like to yield the rest of my time to Dick, if that's okay.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I had 1 or 2 more comments I wanted to make. The we are under control of the United States Homeland Security because of the radioactive material we have on site and we use, and we want to make sure the city's aware of this and they consider that in any annexation. We have a heavy equipment crossing on Meadow Street, guarded, guards, lights, flashing, sirens that we have with the county. And because we have properties on both sides of Meadow, and we want to make sure the city understands that and takes into consideration how that's going to be handled if we're annexed into the city limits. The other thing is that probably is the roads and streets down there are in terrible shape. The letter sent out by the city did not address advantages to being in the city regarding streets. They're in terrible shape. They've never been paved. If you want to know how they're built, I can tell you that, but it's not asphalt. The county does not do that. And they really are being torn up by the oil field equipment, and if the city takes it over, they're going to have an exorbitant amount of expense to pave those streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sills. I have a question for you, Mr. Landers. As far as the public hearing, I mean, what is it that we're doing today? Because I see here, first public hearing.
Today's just a public hearing. There's no vote or anything today. It's just the state law requires several opportunities for the public to know. Whenever a city thinks about the possibility even of annexation, the law now wants to make sure that everybody can have this very type of meeting, that people can come and say, I think it's a bad idea, I think it's a good idea, or I want you to do this first. That's the purpose of these hearings.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that we have some concerns from some citizens. They've told us and they've listed pretty much concerns.
Yes,
so
sir.
The next time we have this hearing, we should be able to address those concerns.
Well, usually if a city, through its city council, wants to take action, you need to respond to those questions. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what are the next steps? So we don't vote on this, right? But
you don't vote on it today. We still have a calendar, and so this will come back. And so today there's no action to be taken. You can direct the staff to respond, but the council you can actually give us whatever direction you want to today.
May I address?
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Of course.
I would like to address 4 or 5 items that we get answered. I'm concerned if there's businesses out there that do not know if they're paying fees in lieu of taxes. I also am concerned that the benefits as well as the timing are not being described. And the timing may not be known, but I do think that we need to address some type of area of some type of beneficial time frame that could happen. Mm-hmm. The education has got to happen, folks. I am so sorry that that we're not properly educating you for the differences in. I would think that it would be wonderful to be a part of the city, and if you don't think that it is, then we're not doing a very good job.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to see the plan. I am quite sure that the city has a plan. The council's not aware of it. I would really like to see the plan. Before our next
that could be
meeting.
for the next meeting, the next time we meet. Okay, so we're not going to vote. We just move on to the next item then.
Yes, sir. Or there's no vote required.
Presented tonight. Thank you for coming up.
Is there any others that wanted to speak?
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Okay. Let's go down to resolutions. Consider an industrial district agreement with CAP Industries, LLC. Mr. Landers.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, if you, looking at that map that's on there, if you look to the far east or the far right of that, below I-20, there's a little orange dot, then a green dot, then an orange dot. That's FMC. That's an expansion of that area. They are seeking both to create an industrial district, and so you're requested to consider that, and if you agree, approve that. And they're also one of the entities that, in addition to the industrial district, has requested annexation.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
The industrial contracts for 1 year,
Through the end of this year.
so it's for 3 months?
Yes, sir.
Just a 3-month
So
agreement?
moved.
So you made a motion? Who made the first motion?
Barbara made the
I made a motion.
Second.
Oh, I thought you said second. All right, so, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the vote is 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, we go down to miscellaneous. Ms. Norma, do we have any appointees?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, next would be citizen comments on non-agenda items. Do we have anybody that would like to speak? Hear none. Okay, adjourn. I need a motion.
So, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you.